Welcome to this video and the conversation that I'm now so happy that I'm going to have with Nina Butler. Welcome, Nina.
Thank you, Yannicka. It's such an honor and pleasure to be here with you in conversation.
I met you last year. It was just before the summer holidays. We were both teaching at the Ringerike Yoga Festival in Brumunddal at a beautiful farm. And we ended up eating lunch together at the festival. And I was so excited to hear about the retreats that you organize and have and host in different places in the world. And it was a beautiful environment in which we met. And I think for both of us, our love for nature is so important in our lives. And it was a perfect place to meet where nature was the frame of our meeting at that festival. Nina, you're from South Africa. Presently, you live in Oslo, but you travel a lot because you have your retreats. Would you like to say a little bit about your journey with yoga, how you got into it, what interested in you in it, and where you are today?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I was born in South Africa and grew up there. I was born in a place most South Africans haven't even heard of, very rural area, not close to anywhere. And so grew up with this sense of wide expanse, big skies. There's something about Africa and the size of the sky. And one of my earliest memories is my mother, who first started Iyengar yoga she took out a book from the library in South Africa when she was 14, and she started practicing Iyengar yoga herself. There were no teachers or studios or anything like that. And this is sort of like late 60s, early 70s. So one of my earliest memories is being, probably a nuisance, rolling about on the floor, crawling next to my mother, doing yoga on hot summer afternoons in her sort of, by then, 80s time, a sort of Jane Fonda workout gear, leotards, and but doing her practice. And so I feel like I was sort of around, it was part of my childhood and part of my earliest memories. And then I was sent to boarding school, as it was necessary because of the rural area we lived in, and I completely forgot about it and did a lot of sports, absolutely love sports, and got super involved in competitive tennis, swimming, running. And anyway, had been pushing my body way too much and got shin splints and stress fractures, stress fracture in my left ankle and shin splints. And I then fell into a period of a sort of moping about and feeling sorry for myself, and missing the endorphin kind of rush of competitive exercise and sports. And I remembered these scenes of my mother doing yoga and sort of thought, well, this is what I can do now. And I actually found hot yoga first. Then I was about 17, 18, and I went to a hot 26 then called Bikram yoga class. And it was exactly what I needed at the time. It has a slight competitive edge to it. It really made me sweat. It was a big room. It's got a kind of quite Americanized. I'm not here at all to it was in a positive way. It was exactly what I needed. This kind of like brouhaha, epic, sweat a lot, get it done experience. And I was absolutely hooked. And it took a couple of months involved in doing that to then start experimenting and trying other styles, and never looked back. And I taught yoga whilst I was studying, and at university I did my teacher training course in 2010 in India, and then I returned again in 2012 and did further studies, and I've been teaching since then. And I've lived in different parts of South Africa as well as the Netherlands, and now in Norway. And I've been teaching in retreats since about 2016. I did a few just hosted that I organized in South Africa. And then from about 2017, I started consulting for an American-based yoga retreat company, first in kind of marketing and copywriting services. But then that quickly overlapped into hosting and organizing retreats, and I worked with them until COVID, until I lost my job, and they closed their business in 2020, and then I revived my own retreats from sort of summer 2021, and that leads us then growth from there to what is in retreat, which I run now, and is a retreat business that focuses on creating experiences that are transformative, travel experiences that are transformative, and bring people to a sense of wonder in nature, and in beautiful wellness and travel surroundings.
After we had first met last year, I was so curious about your retreats, and I went to your website to see where you were taking people on retreats. And I was just in total awe when I saw your website, because the photos just reveal the most beautiful, spectacular places, and that you're so selective about being in places not always secluded, but always totally beautiful and so close to nature. And I know for me, the stillness and calm that I experience in nature, and just the aliveness, is so vital to me in my life. I was so impressed, and now I feel so honored that I'm actually going to have two retreats that you are hosting for me. One in Croatia in September, which I really look forward to, with swimming and bicycling and kayak paddling and yoga outdoors in the morning and afternoon. And then in Morocco in November, in the Atlas Mountains, in a close to an old fort, like Casbah, and being in nature and going hiking. And I'm really, really excited about it and looking forward to it, because it is a great experience to teach people in a yoga studio in Oslo, because we do create an oasis in that setting, where people come home to themselves and feel the calm. But to have this combination of yoga and nature, and in addition, several days in a row, that gives a totally different and very special experience. You have been teaching yoga in retreats for a long time. What is it that you feel is so special about doing yoga on several consecutive days in a different setting than home setting?
Right, yeah. I think when we, first of all, just when we travel, there's a two dual directional experience happening. So the first is that we're leaving home, we're leaving something. And when we do that, we're leaving our responsibilities, and we're also leaving like part of our identity, right? Leaving mom, leaving, co-worker, community meeting organizer, like all of the sort of titles and roles and responsibilities that make up who we are. And when we travel somewhere, when we go on vacation, when we leave the physical place, but also those parts of ourselves. And we arrive in a place, and something interesting happens to time, because we no longer have those parts of our identity and responsibility, and therefore there's a gap, there's an opening. And we are very receptive because everything is new and different. And that gap is then filled with new impressions, and new experiences. And we actually then are able to take on new aspects, and learn new aspects, and rediscover new aspects of ourselves. So we're leaving something behind, but then we're also embracing and taking in newness and memories, hopefully, that will stay with us forever and change us. And so I think it's an incredible opportunity, just with what happens when we travel, to then also tap into the transformative power of mind-body connection and practices like yoga that bring you into the present and help you to observe, yes, your breath and how you feel, and I'm tired or I feel great, energized, whatever, help you connect on that practical level, breath and body, but also connect with, who am I right now? Like, now that I've left those responsibilities behind and I'm standing here in the Serengeti, you know, under with this, you know, amphitheater of life and animals and ancient rhythms. Like, who am I now in this experience? And what does that feel like? And how is that changing me? What do I need to learn from this? What do I want now? It's a wonderful, rich opportunity to connect with ourselves, and to align the mind and the body. And so I also think that it's a wonderful opportunity when we travel, and we all know this, to tap into deep rejuvenation. I think what often happens, will say, for example, you'll have, like, your schedule is clear for a weekend in your house, but that deep rest and rejuvenation is hard to tap into because there's always stuff on our mind, pressure, things we want to do. Then we're repacking the kitchen closet and, you know, like sorting, like, our lives are full and we carry those burdens. But when you travel, you can't sort out the spice cupboard in your kitchen, even if it's chaos. And you kind of, you've got your suitcase and maybe your Kindle, and you can't take much else. And therefore, in terms of like carrying burdens and a need and a want to fill your time with stuff, like it's completely different. And there's an opportunity for a kind of a reset and a rejuvenation, which is very special and powerful, and unique. And then the last aspect of it, which I think is the most exciting, is when you travel, everything that you do, even if it's something very mundane like sipping on a cup of coffee, becomes extraordinary. So if you're sitting in a piazza in an old town in Italy and sipping on a coffee, I mean, what a moment, right? But if it's at your local coffee shop in your hometown, we don't see that as extraordinary. On a deep spiritual level, it is extraordinary. Every moment is extraordinary, and that's the truth. But it just doesn't happen that we feel that all the time. We get sucked in by the mundane, and the banal. But when we travel, we do small things, everyday things, that coffee or stopping, watching a sunset, you know, and it's extraordinary. And when we feel that word that I absolutely love, which is wonder, and in our everyday lives as adults in particular, we feel that very rarely. We become quite jaded and we get into our routine. We know what we like, what we don't like, and we're very focused on goals. And I mean, I'm not diminishing this. It's because life is tough and it's full of burdens and responsibilities, and that's just the way it is. But feeling that wonder is on a chemical level so incredibly good for us. It's a high vibrational emotion, and it's akin to like being filled with love, deep love and gratitude. It's like one of the highest emotions you can feel, and in order to feel wonder, that like, wow, incredible. In order to feel that, it is absolutely necessary that you're in the present moment. There is no experience of wonder that is not also an experience of deep presence. And so that's the third piece to this, and the travel quite naturally brings us to feel that and experience that sense of awe and wonder, which links back to the first one, which is presence, you know, that awareness and being in present and in body, mind, body, and breath.
Mm. Oh, what a great description. You know, it really connects me to the deeper purpose. You know, it's not just take some people on vacation. It's really a transformative process on so many levels. And I think and also see with retreats, whether it's me having led people in retreats or other people going on retreats, that the opportunity it gives to set new intentions and to let go of the old is really so amazing. And I think when you combine it with the qualities of the stillness, the mind-body connection, the opportunity to reflect on your life because you're away from it, and the openness that these new emotions and brain waves create really open up for us to readjust ourselves and to create changes. And I appreciate the way you've, even in regular yoga classes, how you've brought in elements. When I've attended your classes, you often bring up a topic, and that topic makes me reflect on something, and it's relevant to the yoga practice. But it's also something which makes me go home afterwards and say to my husband, Nina spoke in the yoga class about, forgiveness and being loving to yourself and to another. And, isn't this related to, and then we start talking about something in our lives. And I think the way you're weaving in topics into yoga classes is really interesting and very valuable. I remember when I went to the States in the 2000, 2001, many yoga teachers would bring in topics in their yoga classes. And now sometimes the teachers bring in a physical topic, like now we're going to do hip openers,
Yeah.
but it's not quite that common. Like I felt it was 20 years ago that the teacher would have a more philosophical topic or something related to life. And I
Yeah.
really appreciate that when I go to your classes, and that you bring up these topics which make me think about something, and I go home with that afterwards and have something that is like sort of food for the soul in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for saying that. And I'm glad that you enjoy that part of the classes that I teach. And I think that for it goes back to what is the intention? Why are you there? Why are you in the class as both the teacher and as the practitioner? And if I sit back and ask myself, like, why am I here? Well, and if you were to stop and ask people in a class at the start of the class, why am I here? Why are you here? Um, you know, people who are yoga as a physical activity, like as a workout, it's actually not very effective. Like if people had purely physical goals, there are various other types of activity. And I'm saying this to someone who loves yoga. I'm not here to knock yoga, but there are various other things that you can do that are way more like the calories you burn for the time you put in and the muscle, and like on a physical level, like there are so many more types of sports and workouts and so on that are that much more effective. And for the most part, when you ask people that, if you were to stop, and if you are a yoga teacher listening to this, and if you ever, just take a moment at the start of the class and ask people that, their answers are, I will put my neck out and say, 85% of the class are going to say that it's got something to do with calming, centering, realigning, being able to feel a break in themselves in the day, rejuvenation. People are seeking something more, and aligned with that, or sitting next to that, parallel to that, is this kind of deep truth about yoga that ultimately yoga should and must happen if it's in its fullness in our lives. If we really are embracing it as yoga people, it happens off the mat, and it happens in the everyday. And I think that anybody who gets serious about their practice feels that, and that's what keeps you going back, is because wow, look what's happened to my relationships and this, and I feel this happening off the mat because I put in that time on the mat. And so that means then that when we meet in a class, in a studio practice, it is absolutely imperative and relevant to talk about topics, or to weave in topics that are everyday, that are abstract, that are emotional, that are psychosomatic, because the end goal of yoga and the deep truth of yoga is that it is impacting that and in conversation with that. And then lastly, I also think that, you know, there is a risk in yoga, in the yoga world, or any kind of practice or pursuit that has a sense of spiritualism to it, or arises from a spiritual set of doctrine or ideology. There is a risk that you become dogmatic or narrow in both your delivery and in your audience. And I think ultimately truths, deep truths about the human condition, should transcend boundaries of ideology and culture and doctrines. And so I always ask myself, if I'm teaching a yoga class, walking around just throwing out Sanskrit terms and expecting everybody to chant with me and so on, like I'm isolating more people than I am inviting people. So if I'm going to share the truth of this and make it impactful, how can I speak to people on a level that matters to them? And those topics and themes are a way to do that, you know, are a way to make somebody who's joined classes occasionally, who doesn't feel comfortable around the idea of spiritualism and so on, for them to still walk away with something, to still feel transformed in some way.
I think it really makes the class so much more valuable when we can address different topics, like whether the topic is of how to deal with pain, or it is what do you want to give nourishment for to blossom in the summertime? What are your intentions for this week? It could be so many topics that are personal and relate to life, which makes the practice that we do on the yoga mat, when we are open and when we are working with the nervous system and the brain and the breath and the body, that we're able to plant seeds that we can walk away with off into our lives, so that we can make changes in our lives according to what we set ourselves to when we are aligned and when we are calm. Because so much of the time we're in alarm, we are in fight flight mode, and we're in survival mode, and so we're not in our daily lives necessarily ready at all times to make changes or to take new decisions. But when we are on the mat, if we can make some decisions, and it's just fascinating the thoughts that can come in the head, or the feelings that can arise during the yoga practice, when we return to that after the practice and think, oh, I had that thought, or I had that feeling when I was on the mat, uh, it becomes something very valuable for our lives.
Totally. And I think we live in a world now more than ever that is, everything that we consume in terms of media and the way in which media is structured is all bite-sized, and it's very superficial. And our brains are muscles. And when we move through the world, whether it's online, on screen, or in urban spaces, everything is arriving at us in bite-sized short snippets at an absolute superficial level. And our brain as a muscle remembers that and is impacted by that and starts to operate in that way. And we have a great risk in the world we live in now, where long form writing, slow experiences, waiting for anything is becoming redundant. We have instant gratification all the time, and our brain remembers that and starts to expect that. But unfortunately, the way the mind works, memory works, emotions work, and soul works is at a much slower cadence. And deep communications with yourself, making big decisions, going through the transformation, deep reflections. All of those things don't happen in bite-sized likes, dislike, posting, reels, all of that. Like they don't, that's not actually how we work on it on a deep cognitive level, but our brains are being forced into that. And so we kind of existing on a very superficial level. And by being yoga teachers and by being in the yoga world, we have an opportunity, and I think an imperative to just invite people to slow down, to slow the mind down, and to step away from that and process things just as you have been describing, like on the mat, and rethink about it later. Like that is just doing that is a mental exercise that is almost like revolutionary, like contrary to everything we're being fed now. Yeah.
And I think now in our daily life, when we go to a yoga class or practice yoga, we're often alone afterwards, or we go home to our own family, and there are no one there to talk about it with. And I think the value when you're in a retreat space,
Yes.
there is a living together for several days, which is also very valuable because then you can express your thoughts, you can think about it, you can share, you can hear other people's experience, and that has also it reinforces our inner process that we're able to have exchanges related to it if we want to. Of course, we can be in quietude and we don't have to share it, but the fact that there are like-minded people there that can understand what you're going through and you can hear their experiences, that's also a great learning opportunity and an inspiration.
Definitely, absolutely. And, I find generally that when people book retreats, they book them for, there's always a second level kind of motivation or inspiration behind so if you book a vacation, it's like, okay, I have that time off and the family's available, and that's our vacation week. And I know I'm going to be tired then or whatever, but it's like quite a set number of variables, and the decision making is a little bit distinct to the decision making for a retreat. I think when people book a retreat, it is very common that there is a juncture in their life, whether it's they've changed job or ended a relationship, or there's been a grieving process. There's some kind of junction or change or shift in their life, or they're deeply exhausted, or they felt that they're starting to lose sense of themselves in some way. There's always a next level motivation. And at the start of the retreat, in the opening circle of a retreat and open circle, I often invite people to share what their intentions and motivations are for a practice and for a retreat gathering. And there's always that deeper sense of longing, of desire, and goals when it comes to that, to being there. And I think aligned to that, everybody in some way needs to be heard and seen. And I think when we are operating in our everyday lives, we can kind of shrink away from that. We can kind of lose that in our workplace, in our home. Yes, we're seen, but are we seen for that side of ourselves that's being neglected? Or are we seen for if you're a mom, are you still seen for that young woman that's still in you? Do people see that in you, or is that side of you forgotten?
Right.
As an
And,
example, and I
and
think,
then
yeah,
and then being in a retreat with mostly new people, because
yeah,
most people travel to retreats alone. Some people may travel together, but very, very many people come alone. And the freedom to be yourself in a new way, in a new
yes,
setting with
and to
new
be
people.
seen for that, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very special. And I think that it's there's just something incredibly, there's like a chemistry that happens in a group as well, over a few days. Like the first day, everybody's getting to know each other and settling into the rhythm, and there's almost like a chemistry that starts to oscillate, and be amplified as the days go on. And after 5 days, 6 days, a group has its own energy, and and people are feeling good because they've rested, because they've been in nature, because they've done yoga every day, because they've had good food, they've laughed, but they're also feeling good because they're feeding off the energy of the group of everybody else, and it's kind of like a what's the word, like a snowball effect, and then people are feeling better, but then they're also being lifted by the chemistry of the group itself.
Yeah. So wonderful to hear about the retreat experience, and I hope that many people in our audience will have opportunities to go to retreats, whether it's in Norway or abroad, whether it's with us or with others. I am very, very happy that I'm going to do retreats that are organized by you in retreat.
We're
And
very happy and honored that you will be part of the In Retreat team and are leading these 2 wonderful trips this year, and more destinations to come.
Very exciting. We're going to say goodbye for now. Thank you for sharing so much of your experience about the mind-body alignment and how we can go into ourselves and develop as persons and yogis. Thank you to you who have listened to us. Welcome back to more conversations about other interesting topics. Thank you for joining us now, and have a great day. Namaste, and thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Yannicka. Thanks, everyone.